Obviously, it's very hectic, and being a big Canadian boy, it's very hot here. There's not a day that goes by that I am not sweating. But from a business standpoint, it's just so exciting. How's everybody doing? Here's another episode of Breaking It Down. So a question we get a lot is why we decided to open our office in Guangzhou. There's a lot of reasons, and it starts off with an accident. So I had dropped out of university. I was going to a school down in the States. I had already spoken Chinese. I knew that I wanted to go to China. And I was talking to one of my friends who also spoke Chinese, who was getting a job at the American embassy in Shanghai. And he said, I have some friends from Canada, and being Canadian, that work at the embassy. I could probably give you an introduction. So I started down that path. Initially, I was supposed to go to Shanghai until I realized I'm dropping out of school to work for the government, huh? Why would I do that? Then at the same time, kind of simultaneously, I had heard about the Canton Fair. Canton Fair is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, import and export fairs in the whole world. So it's where all the factories in China go to, show off their wares, show off their capabilities. So I ended up here. I made the decision not to work for the government and to move here and see what I could do. So I started looking around. I went to the fair. I went to a bunch of different factories. And really, I realized that there was three options where I could live, right? Shenzhen, which is right across the border from Hong Kong, Dongguan, and then Guangzhou. And I visited all of them, and I just like the vibes of Guangzhou. Guangzhou is a very old city. It's been around for so long compared to Shenzhen, which used to be a fishing village 50 years ago, and has sprung up and has got very big quick. I always found that Guangzhou had a bit more of an impact on me culturally, and I really, just kind of jived with it. But that's personal, right? When I started the business, why did I pick Guangzhou as our hub? Let's look at a map. So here's a map of China. Chinese call it looks like a rooster, right? The map, obviously. Look at the head. Here's the back and then the breast, right? And this is where all the people live. The majority of the population lives on the eastern coast. This is much more farmlands, and out here is mountains. But then down here is Guangdong, which is basically the most prosperous of all of the provinces. You have Shanghai and Beijing, but Guangdong is, has just so much money, so many factories. To me, it's the obvious place to go. So let's take a look a bit closer at Guangzhou, Dongguan, and Shenzhen. There's Hong Kong, and then you have Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Dongguan. This right here is called the Pearl River, Zhujiang in Chinese, and these three cities make up the PRD, the Pearl River Delta, right? So they're a triangle. A lot of factories in this area, right? I think there's 100,000 factories in Guangdong. There's just so many. Anything you can think of that you can make can be made in these three places. So it's just an unbelievable region. I was so excited. Like I said, I personally like Guangzhou. Each of these cities have different things. We have lots of relationships with factories in both of those cities, but really everything is made in these three cities. This is where everything's happening. All the big companies, Apple, Tech, Shenzhen. Guangzhou has right north where our office is in a district called Huadu is the biggest bag market in the entire world. I can't say it enough, right? The reason is because everything's happening here. I just couldn't believe how many factories there were and how many different things were going on, how fast stuff was moving. So I set up base. The next reason why, and this is more of why I wanted to stay in China, right? A lot of our competitors have offices in Texas or in Atlanta. To me, that doesn't make sense, right? I'm a boots on the ground, in the trenches type of guy. And I knew that for our company to be very successful, we needed to do that as well, right? Lower the feedback delay, no time zone difficulties. Samples and prototypes can be confirmed in a day rather than a week, or in today's world, a month, with how slow shipping and logistics are. The ability to communicate back and forth in person, you can't trade that for anything. So in-person meetings are incredibly important in Chinese business, in all business, but in Chinese business especially. They call it in China guanxi, which means relationships. And being able to have relationships with the people that you work with, being able to, shake someone's hand, being able to go out for dinner with them, going out to drink with people, having a whiskey, smoking a cigar in person rather than a choppy Skype line or a Zoom call where, you can't really see the other person, or a Google Meet where you can't even hear them. Being able, in China to go to KTV with them, not my favorite thing, not really my jam, but it's part of the business. It's just so much better, and it builds so much more trust and value, and the relationship, the bonds that you can create, to me, are invaluable. Being able to do all those things makes doing business easier. That's a fact. Obviously, we live in a world that's different than 10 years ago, and it's getting easier to meet people virtually. Translation software makes this easier as well. But at the end of the day, to me, you can't trade that for anything. It creates so much value and comes with so much trust. Which leads me to my next point, which is trust. Having trust is super important, as I just mentioned, but more important is the ability to verify. Being overseas, you've met them, you have trust, but you can only take their word for what it's worth, right? When I first started the company, I went to a factory, 2 factories, sometimes even 3 factories every day for 2 years, right? To check up on our orders, to check up on our product, to see what's happening. We don't do business with any factories that we haven't physically been to and inspected. So it's great to have the trust, but being able to take that one step further is just a world of difference. The next part is lower overhead. In China, real estate is extremely expensive. The rest of life expenses here is quite cheap. Eating, renting office space, furnishing the office space, salaries. Basically everything is a few steps below if you were working in New York City or Toronto or in terms of price. And that allows us to add so much more quality to the service and the product that we provide by being able to use profits from the company to expand our production capabilities, to expand different staff that have different areas of expertise, right? That has been invaluable. If we were in San Francisco or in Toronto, that would add a lot of cost that we would need to figure out how to recoup. So being here, it allows us, I think, to come down on our costs as well as come down on our pricing for our clients. So overall, Guangzhou is just a dope spot to be. I love it here. I've been here for 8 years now. I wouldn't change where I live for the world. Every place has pros and cons. Obviously, it's a very hectic, and as being a big Canadian boy, it's very hot here. There's not a day that goes by that I am not sweating. But from a business standpoint, it's just so exciting. The competition's so high. There's always a new move to make. There's always something to add to what we do as a business and to expand and to scale in a way that, out of all the places I've been in the world would not be possible. The infrastructure here is so high. The capability is so high. There's so much talent. It's not that expensive. To me, this is the center of the world. This is where everything business, at least certainly from a hardware perspective, this is where it starts. And I want to be a part of that wave. Hope that explains why we chose Guangzhou. Have a good one. Peace.